Welcome back, Truth Seekers. On this edition of the Athanasius Report, we are going to address an issue that is on almost everyone's mind, the election. Yes, I can hear the collective groans out there, but this is an important issue. This is an issue that, as a Catholic, and certainly as a Christian, we must pay attention to and be a participant in. So what I am going to do is dedicate some of my next videos, starting with this one, to explaining why we have a moral mandate to participate in the election process, what issues we as Christians are required to pay attention to and vote our consciences on, and finally, I will look into the two presumptive nominees that will be the most likely candidates to win, Trump and Hillary, and make a moral case for and against them, respectively. Why am I doing this? Because sadly, too many Christians, especially Catholics, are saying they will stay home this election rather than vote. Some church leaders are even condoning this option, believing that it is more morally acceptable to not vote if our consciences will not permit it. One such leader that I've run across, Father Michael Garnizo, writing on townhall.com, expressed this very idea along with his personal feelings towards one of the candidates, i.e. Trump. There are also Catholics that say that because they cannot vote for Trump based upon his braggadocious and rude nature, that they are instead going to vote for Hillary. To these cowards, I say enough with your malarkey. It's bad enough that we have the enemies of Christendom and this country doing their best to discourage us. We don't need your false sanctimonious piety or your screwed up consciences doing their work for them. If there is one thing I cannot abide more than people attacking me from the front, it's backstabbing wretches like Father Michael trying to kick my knees out from behind. There's a reason traitors are frozen next to Satan. I say again, enough with these losers and cowards. Christ did not call us to hide when things got tough. Going by his example, we should be doing the exact opposite. He knew he was going to be crucified, yet he went to Jerusalem anyway to face his death. What courage that must have took. Yet we cannot bring ourselves to choose between two people in an election that I am convinced will determine whether we hope to someday reclaim this country for Christ, or we watch it finally die in the tentacles of evil leftist secularism, and with it witness the martyrdom of millions of American Christians. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, those are the stakes with this election. The enemies on the left are so close to finally transforming this country into another godless socialist society like Russia, China, and everywhere else they get control. History is a darn good indicator of what will happen if they succeed. Over 100 million people were starved to death, sent to camps to die, prisons to die, or outright murdered under these leftist regimes. Yet too many Christians, quote unquote, are comfortable either voting for a godless leftist candidate or staying home and giving the left a better chance to win. That is going to be the focus of this video. Those who choose not to participate. While this will be discussed from a Catholic viewpoint, I implore all Christians and non-Christians to listen, as the information within this presentation should inspire all of us to know what our duties are to promoting a better society. What then are our responsibilities as Catholic Christians? Well, drawing from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, we are all called to be responsible citizens. According to their documents, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, responsible citizenship is a virtue, and participation in political life is a moral obligation. We cannot hide under a rock. We cannot just throw our hands up in the air and say, the whole system is so messed up, what's the point? We must don the honor of virtue and truth, and brave the tempest of evil and injustice that oftentimes permeates the political process. We are charged by Christ to be lights to the world and to bear witness to his truth. Remember his parable about hiding the light under the basket? This is further codified in the Catechism. In fact, there are numerous pages dedicated to just this subject, which should indicate the importance the Church places on this topic. One paragraph lists our responsibilities to participate in society. Quote, human society can be neither well ordered nor prosperous unless it has some people invested with legitimate authority to preserve its institutions and to devote themselves as far as is necessary to work and care for the good of all. Translation: society needs leadership, which is derived from the people of the society, to preserve societal institutions, such as education and job creation, and to look after and assist all within the society to live with dignity. Leadership can be a monarchy, a democracy, or in our country's case, individual representatives the people elect to send to D.C. in our place. Regardless of how a country's government works, everyone is called to be a leader in some way, and therefore, we are all called to participate for the good of our society. Societal members must provide for the common good. But what constitutes as the common good? Fortunately, the Catechism is there to help spell out what three essential elements make up the common good. First, there is respect for the person. This is listed first because of the very importance attached to this idea. In America, our Declaration of Independence declares that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is first, as it should be, because the dead are not capable of pursuing their rights. That is why abortion is not only an abominable act, but a horrendous injustice against our rights. But more on that in the next video. Without life, all the rights we are naturally given by are meaningless. Society must respect, therefore, not just these rights we hear so often, but all rights that allow the person to fulfill their vocation, meaning such things as exercising natural freedoms like freedom to openly practice religion, the right to conscience, and safeguard our privacy. Next, there is providing for the social well-being and development. While there may be various interests within society, there should be easy access to the things that help make leading a fulfilling human life possible. These things include food, water, shelter, work, education, and culture, the right to establish a family, and many more that we will cover next time. Finally, the providing of peace and security. Peace is the tranquility of order, not merely the absence of war or limited to maintaining the balance of adversaries. Peace requires the safeguarding of personal goods, free communication among people, respect for the dignity of persons, and the tireless practice of fraternity. It is the work of justice and the effect of charity. Security is the basis of the right to legitimate personal and collective defense. Members of society, therefore, must help ensure that peace be the norm, so that everyone can live their lives to the full potential of their vocations. They do this by providing security through a military, first responders, or individuals willing to participate in a militia that can deter evil and prepare adequate defense should the need ever arise. This is not an endorsement or sanction of any militia group, by the way, or to say that everyone must participate in the military or as a police officer. This is to say that we all have a responsibility to support those who make it their vocations to defend and protect the peace and security that society and its members enjoy, and to call them out for when they don't. Everyone must participate to the best they can in promoting the common good. Participation is the voluntary and generous engagement of a person in societal interchange. It means we give freely of our time, our talents, and our treasures in working with our neighbors and other societal members to contribute to the betterment of our communities. We accomplish this by taking these actions. First, we accept personal responsibility for our families, our work, and the good of others in society. If you can help someone, you have a moral duty to help them. If you can help educate someone, then you need to. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, to paraphrase the Chinese proverb. Don't pass the buck, saying someone else should do it. Take an active part in public life. Run for office if you see a need. Don't hide. Don't shirk legitimate duties, whether it be through taxes or voting. Be an active member of society, no matter how big or small your contribution may be. Second, we fight injustice and promote institutions that improve the conditions of human life. Do not allow others to defraud or undercut their responsibilities and those of other societal members. Stand up for what is good and just always. This does not mean hide behind your conscience or moral beliefs, like a scared 2-year-old hiding behind his mother's skirt. It does not mean that we give up when we are presented with less than perfect choices. It means to have the courage to fight. To use a rugby analogy, politics is like two teams scrumming over the ball. The one that wins is the one that fights and wins over inches, feet, and yards. Would it be nice if we could vote for perfect Christian candidates who have no flaws, or for laws that in no way compromise our beliefs? Yes. But reality check, it never happens. So rather than getting flummoxed by the whole ordeal, we need to instead pray more, speak up more, and convince more people the just cause of our side. By not fighting, we are ceding the field to the enemy. That's what's got us in this mess in the first place. What's that? You don't like the choices being presented to you, eh, Father Michael and company? Well, tough. Life doesn't give us the perfect choice. Every decision we make has unintended consequences, but we cannot allow these potentially bad consequences to paralyze us from action. Instead, we need to study and make those decisions that do the best job or stop the worst evil. And no, those two concepts are not mutually exclusive. To illustrate this, there was a famous psychological study performed in the last century. Participants were given this scenario. A train is speeding uncontrollably down the tracks. Ahead, there are 5 workers on the tracks, unaware that within moments the train will barrel through and kill them. You, in this case the participant of the study, are next to a switch that can change tracks and save the 5 men. However, on that other track, there is one worker who would be struck and killed by the train. What do you do? The best answer is to throw the switch and save the 5 men. Yes, the other men would unfortunately die, but you didn't throw the switch to kill them, you threw it to save the lives of the 5 men. That is the greater good. You can't say, well, I choose not to participate in the hopes that another choice will present itself because that means you're allowing the worst evil to prevail. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, as the band Rush would say. The same concept needs to be applied to how we view elections. Instead of only focusing on every candidate's negatives and saying, there are no good candidates, we need to instead look at what good they would do and see which one would promote the greatest amount of good. This isn't to say that you support any evil that may come from the choice. Remember, our first thought should be to promote the greatest societal good. If candidate A has 3 pros and a con, but candidate B has 1 pro and 3 cons, you go with A because more good will come from them than B. Also, inaction is just as morally bankrupt as not voting for the best option. Withholding your vote simply because you don't like either candidate means you're helping the worst candidate get elected. So to the Father Michaels of this country, stop giving up because your perfect candidate didn't get picked. Giving up means the worst candidate has a better chance of getting elected. Vote the better candidate into office, and then continue the fight to have our voices heard and our consciences honored, and our morals revered. We win through a series of victories, no matter how big or small, not by looking for that unicorn of perfection. Lastly, be leaders who exercise their authority to strengthen the values that inspire confidence of the members of the group, and encourage them, through education and culture, to put themselves at the service of others. Why is it that no good candidates ever seem to run for office? Because we are failing to raise good candidates. It starts at home. We need to teach our children the importance of faith, the morals and truths within it. We need to instruct the next generation on civics, how government is run, and why it is so important for good people to take up the mantle and run for office. We are not doing that. We've put the responsibility of our children's education onto others, most who don't care to raise good, responsible, and civic-minded Christians. And then we have the audacity to ask, well, gee, why aren't there any Christians running for office that I'm comfortable voting for? If we want moral leaders, we have to be the ones to raise them. The next area of failure is our churches, especially the leadership. No one wants to take a hard stand on any political issues. It used to be once upon a time that Christians and church leaders were not afraid to stand up and threaten boycotts or stage protests against public figures who failed to live up to Christian standards. Catholic bishops took an active role in monitoring Hollywood movies to ensure positive Christian images were being portrayed. Sadly, our priests and our bishops are ceding any moral authority and remaining silent, or put out a toothless statement expressing their dismay and so forth. On the evangelical side, it's even worse, with leaders actively supporting evil. What is so aggravating is that Christians make up an overwhelming majority of in this country. If all of us, especially our leadership, were to speak up and galvanize the base, none of the evils that have taken hold in society would be taking place. We could transform this country overnight if only we could see how much power we really have. Continuing with leadership, as we see in our society, some people are called to lead in manners such as public office or heads of companies. In other societies, we can see people held up as monarchs or lifelong political appointees. For these societal members, they sometimes have to issue laws and decrees that affect society. Sometimes they're unpopular. So what does the church teach us about authority? For that, we need to turn to the Fourth Commandment and the Catholic Catechism. While it has long been seen as pertaining to just the family, the actual meaning of the Fourth Commandment goes much deeper. The Catechism spells all this out, from duties of children to duties of parents to the duties of families to society and much more. Where we are focusing our concern is the duties of citizens. As paragraph 2239 states, quote, "It is the duty of citizens to contribute along with civil authorities to the good of society in the spirit of truth, justice, solidarity, and freedom. The love and service of one's country follow the duty of gratitude and belong to the order of charity. Submission to legitimate authorities and service of the common good require citizens to fulfill their roles in the life of the political community." So citizens, meaning all of us within this country, are obligated to follow and honor legitimate authorities, meaning those we lawfully elect to lead us. This also includes legitimate instituted laws and services that support the common good. As stated earlier, to promote the peace and stability every society needs to function, it is necessary that citizens support their elected leaders, follow society's laws, and honor those appointed to offices of authority. But that does not mean blind obedience. The citizen is obliged in conscience not to follow directives of civil authorities when they are contrary to the demands of the moral order. Refusing obedience to civil authorities when their demands are contrary to those of an upright conscience finds its justification in the distinction between serving God and serving the political community. So, to the Father Michaels of the world, Trump is the Republican nominee. Yet, let's just suppose here, he somehow convinces enough people to change the language of the party's position on abortion, as you have complained about. Guess what? You don't have to follow it. You can fight it. You can argue to change it back at the next election. We are not ordered to blindly follow what our leaders say. Coincidentally, this is why I'm making this video. Because leaders like you, Father Michael, are not standing up and speaking the truth. And oh, by the way, the whole thing about, Trump maybe changing the language on abortion for the Republicans. I don't hear you decrying the Democrats. And guess what? The language didn't get changed anyway. So stop complaining. As a quick aside, with regard to the Republican Party, Father Michaels, why are you so distraught over the state of a political party? Yes, the Republican Party has traditionally been the home to moral-minded Americans, and we really don't have another option in this election. But the party's not the end-all and be-all. If the Republican Party fails, others will step in and take its place. Remember the Whigs? Instead of fretting over the state of a party, focus on the bigger picture of what will happen if the left gets the candidate elected. Think about the left loading the Supreme Court with justices who will never overturn Roe v. Wade, who will uphold homosexual marriage, who will strike down the rights of Christians who refuse to comply. Think about the left forever changing the demographics of this country by granting amnesty to illegals from leftist countries who will continue to vote leftist, thus making it impossible for Christians on the right to ever again get good principled leaders elected. Think about the millions of Christians that will be persecuted, perhaps even martyred, because their government is sided with the devil's deceit of secularism and actively seek to squash all moral and just opposition. We cannot allow ourselves to be subservient to evil. This is not to say that we should violently overthrow every leader, authority figure, or law that contradicts God's moral truths. It is to say, though, that we are allowed to refuse to follow them and take peaceful measures to stop them and replace them. Yes, there are very rare occasions citizens can use violence, but such measures should only be taken as a final measure, after all other peaceful options have been expended. We won't be spending too much time talking about this, but perhaps in the future, who knows. To conclude this section on our responsibilities, remember the words of Jesus. Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Give due respect and authority to those leaders elected to lead, yet always remain faithful to God and his moral truths. Consider the words of St. Thomas More right before his martyrdom at the hands of King Henry VIII. I remain the king's loyal servant, but God's first. Okay, so we all have responsibilities. Some of you may be asking, why should I care? Why should I spend more time and energy participating in a system that's corrupt, dysfunctional, and seemingly incapable of fixing itself? Because Christianity is under attack in this country and around the world. We are seeing this happen more and more each day and with greater intensity. We are seeing government and society trying to force religious institutions and private citizens to violate their conscience, whether through laws like Obamacare, trying to force groups like the Little Sisters to administer contraception, to atheists and even Satanists attacking Christians for displaying nativity scenes, the Ten Commandments, or even trying to hold prayer in schools at government functions. We have members of the Supreme Court okaying intrinsic evils like abortion and homosexual marriage, lending credibility to supporters, while also kneecapping those fighting for the moral fabric of society. Educational institutions are threatening outspoken Christians with failing grades, and in some cases, expulsion for expressing their views. Meanwhile, they have promoted and continue to promote dangerous and quite often evil ideologies such as moral relativism, Guyism, and Marxism. We need to care because in societies where Christians remove themselves or have been removed from politics, anti-Christian laws and statutes follow. In Britain, Christians cannot get a radio broadcast license because their teachings on homosexuality. A street preacher was jailed for reading aloud a Bible passage that condemned homosexuality. A short distance away in Northern Ireland, a pastor was threatened with prison time for his homilies spoken in his church, many of which decried homosexuality. In the Middle East, where the majority of governments are Islamic-based, Christians are granted few civil rights. Many are persecuted, some martyred on a daily basis. Just this year in Pakistan, a Christian man was stripped naked and beaten to death with logs by the police. Christian churches are destroyed, and the government refuses permission to repair or rebuild. But it's not limited to the outside world. Here in America, recently we saw what happened when the gay mayor of Houston tried to unilaterally pass an ordinance allowing men to go into women's restrooms and vice versa. When the local Christian pastors pushed back and told the congregations to disobey such an ordinance, she attempted to silence them through legal subpoenas. The case was finally resolved when the ordinance was forced to go before the people for a vote, and the citizens of Houston overwhelmingly struck it down. In Kentucky, a state clerk was arrested and jailed because she refused to sign off on gay marriage certificates. Christians have been marginalized and some even persecuted for speaking out against homosexuality. Christians stage undercover videos exposing the pure evil, illegal, and unethical practices of Planned Parenthood. But rather than bring charges for those Planned Parenthood officials, legal officials instead arrested and charged the video makers. These aforementioned examples are not meant to scare or to depress, nor do they fully represent the near immeasurable number of stories we could draw from. This sampling was chosen to illustrate what can happen and does happen when Christians, especially Catholics, do not lead with their morals and participate in society. If these examples are not enough to help persuade you, then please consider this. For the sake of millions of souls who put themselves on the road to perdition, who choose the wide and easy path to hell by following moral relativism and these other evils, we must care. We must stand up and be faithful witnesses to God's truth. The cost here on earth is nothing compared to the eternal damnation that awaits souls. That is why we must care. That is why I am speaking on this, because I care deeply for the eternal well-being of my fellow man. If nothing else, Is it not our moral duty and responsibility to be our brother's keeper and help everyone who can be saved get to heaven? In my next video, we will explore the moral truths that every Christian needs to know when deciding on how to vote. Thank you, everyone who watched this. Please share this video with anyone who may be considering staying home this election. We need them to join us in this fight. If we have another election like 2012 where millions of Christians stay home, we will have allowed for the enemy to not only finally kill this country, but also further persecute and silence Christianity. For the sake of millions of Christian Americans, we must all stand together, or we will surely hang separately, as Benjamin Franklin once said. Christ's peace upon you all.